Now, the big question is, can I remember how to do this? Can I remember my intro? Can I remember anything about how to do a podcast? Who knows? Let's find out. Hi guys, and welcome back to the Emily Knits channel. No, I can't remember how to do this or do a podcast. I'm Emily. I am a knitter and crocheter in my mid-30s, based in the north of Nottinghamshire in the UK, where I live close to Sherwood Forest with my other half and our 2 dogs. It's been a while since I've done a podcast and I feel like I can't remember who I am, where I am. You know, like when you've been on annual leave at work and you come back and you can't even remember your password for your laptop. That's the feeling I've got. But I've got a traditional format podcast episode for you today. It's going to be a fairly long one because it's been probably about a month, maybe a little bit less than a month since I last did a podcast. So grab a drink. I've got a coffee today, a lovely festive coffee, which was part of a swap I did, which we're going to talk about in a bit more detail because I've got some stuff to show you from it. I've got some finished objects. One of them I am wearing. I have some whips, which are all entirely new, except for, you've seen them briefly on my whip parade if you've watched that, but I didn't go into much detail, so we'll go into detail some more about that. And we have some updates as well, because we've had a bit of a milestone since the last time I podcast. So let me take a drink. It's very hot, so it can wait a bit. And we'll get into it. First off, I'll talk about what I'm wearing in a minute, because it's a whip that I finished. A finished object, you could say. That's the normal parlance, isn't it? But first off, where can you find me? So you can find me on Instagram as @Emily_knits, which is the same as the channel name. All of this will be down below, along with links if you want to find me anywhere. You can contact me via email on emilyknitspodcast@gmail.com. You can find me on Ravelry as EmilyKnits36. I'm not very good at keeping that up to date, but you can find me on there. Please feel free to add me as a friend on there or anything like that. There is also a wish list on Ravelry, which I will link below if you wanted to buy me a pattern to say thank you or to support the channel. And you can also find me and support me on Ko-fi as Emily Knits, which again will be listed down below. So first things first, before we get into anything else, bit of an admin, top of the podcast, whatever you want to call it, update. A massive thank you to everyone, because since the last time I put up a video, which was the whip parade, we have gone over a big milestone and we now have over 1,000 subscribers. So thank you so much, so unbelievably much. I'm going to do some sort of giveaway, but I haven't quite decided what that's going to be yet. So keep stay here, stay tuned. There we go. Oh my gosh, stay tuned. And details of that will be coming soon, but I thought we would create a bit of a special video as well to say thank you, and I want your guys' input on that. So leave me either in the comments below, or I'm going to put a poll up on Instagram, and I'm going to put a poll up on the community tab as well, because I'd really like to get your guys' thoughts. I thought we could do a special video, and there's one of 3 options I thought of that we could film. I could do a proper full-on stash tour, like showing you everything. I could do an Ask Me Anything, but I need you guys to send me questions for that. So if you have an Ask Me Anything, or if you want that, you want to vote for that, send me a question as well. Through any of the ways. You can contact me, Instagram, comments on here, on the community tab that I put up, Ravelry, or email, anything like that. Or we could do an unpopular knitting opinions video. So which of those... Let me know which of those you'd like to see, and I will try and get that done in the next couple of weeks as a bit of a sort of slightly different from the normal content, but a way to say thank you to you guys, and I'm really interested to see what content you want to see, so let me know. And yeah, just a huge thank you. It feels like an absolutely massive milestone. We've just gone over a year of being on YouTube full stop, of this channel being a thing. And whether you are a new subscriber, because we've had a bit of an influx, or whether you've been here from the beginning, none of this would be possible without any of you, so thank you so much. And without any more waffle or anything like that, let's get into the actual episode. Did I have any other admin? You'd tell me if I did, wouldn't you? I think that's all, so let's jump into it. So we'll talk about what I'm wearing first. I do have a few other FOs. I've got a laptop here as well with notes on it, so if I'm looking over there for anything, that's why. I'm looking at yardages and stuff like that. I've got a few FOs to talk about. Most of them I don't have with me, other than this one, so we'll talk about this one. The rest are going to probably be pictures, because I did take pictures of them all, I think, or you have seen them in previous episodes as well, so we'll talk about those and then we'll move on to whips. So what am I wearing? This is my first finished object of 2025 and possibly my new favourite sweater. This is my Breton sweater, which was a crochet test for Grace's Handmade. This is going to be coming out in the next couple of weeks. I think it's got about a week left on the test, maybe a little bit less than that, and then the pattern will be coming out fairly shortly after. And I have loved making this. I have really loved making this. Let me see if I can stand up and show you. I'm probably going to need to push you back a bit, so bear with me a sec. Oh, I've just knocked some yarn flying. There we go. So if I just pop onto the sofa a bit, you can see a bit better. I did mine a bit oversized anyway, and then I've mentioned in a couple of podcasts that I've lost a bit of weight towards the end of last year. So this is more oversized on me than the pattern recommends. I've got about 11 inches of positive ease here. I knit the size 6, which should give you a finished bust of 56 inches, I think, if I remember rightly. If it's different than that, I'll pop it on the screen. And that gives me currently about 11 inches of positive ease, so that is a lot of positive ease on me, as you can see. But I was quite happy with that because it's given me this really sort of casual sweatshirt vibe. Let me see if I can show you the back. It's going to be a bit more difficult because it's colour changing yarn. Obviously I've got slightly different colours on the back than I have on the front and on the sleeves. But I'm really, really happy with how this turned out. And I have noticed, this was not intentional in the pattern, I don't think, but I have noticed you can wear it reversible. So I've worn this a couple of days. Oops, that's an end I missed. I tried to pass it off as I'd done my ends, but I didn't. I did most of them. I've just missed the sleeves because I hate doing the sleeves. So I've worn it a couple of days like this as well. So you can see again, if I get back up on the bed, it gives like a crew neck, and I really, really like how that looks. I think that looks really, really nice. And then you've got a bit of a V on the back, but not a super low one. And it doesn't cut off. It's not uncomfortable at the front, I don't find. But this isn't the way you're supposed to wear it, so let me turn it back around to the way it is intended to be worn. So this is the way it's intended to be worn, and I made size 6, like I said. This goes from it's a fully size inclusive pattern. I can't remember the top and bottom ranges, but I'll pop them on the screen. And I would say, I think she rates it for intermediate, and I'd say it probably is. Some of the things like the neckline and the ribbing were new to me. I'm not a super experienced crocheter. I've crocheted a lot, but I tend to crochet the same things, or granny squares, things like that. Garments particularly are newer to me. So some of the skills in this were not out of my comfort zone, but I hadn't done those particular stitches before. But I made this in Stylecraft. No, I didn't. I made this in Yarn Smith's Pebble Haze Prince DK. You have heard me rave about this yarn last year multiple times. I made my Yorkshire blanket out of it, and some of this is actually leftovers from the Yorkshire blanket. So the white, the contrast white, which is the stripes, and I did it on the neckline as well, is Stylecraft. No, again, Yarn Smith's Pebble Haze, not Prince, just Pebble Haze DK in the shade Marble, which is quite a cool toned white colour. It's not really, I thought online it looked more like a cream, like an off-white, but this is, maybe shows better on this side because the daylight's catching it. It is a proper white, like it's a white. I was a bit surprised by that when it arrived. You can see in that middle section, it's a white. And then the colour changing is their Prince, which is in the colour Seam. And I did do a bit of colour matching to try and make sure when I'd done the fronts and things that I had sort of at least similar colour families up the top and stuff, and I think I did a fairly good job of it. I'm pleased with it. I didn't colour match the back and front because I didn't have enough yarn left at that point or inclination to do that, and I'm not super bothered about that, the fact that it's a bit different there, but if you wanted to you could. And there are plenty of people, the original sample, or the two samples that Grace made herself, one was in green with a cream stripe, and the other one was just solid in a hand dyed variegated yarn. So plenty of people have done it in solids. They've done it with different stripes. I think I did it slightly different to pattern in that the neckline and the cuffs aren't supposed to be done in the contrast colour, but I did, and I really like how that's turned out. The ribbon on the bottom of it is supposed to be done in your contrast colour if you... No, it's not. I think I've made that up. I think the ribbing... I've just had a thought as well that I think I've also done the ribbon, and I don't think this was supposed to be in the contrast, and I've just done it in the contrast, but I'm happy with how that looks. I liked almost that sweatshirt vibe of having the contrast collars and cuffs and things, and I really like how this neckline with the contrast has come out. I think this is really nice, clean. So those are the changes I made. Otherwise, I didn't add any length to anything. I did the sleeves a bit shorter than she says. However, she doesn't give you a specific number of rows for the sleeves. She just she tells you to keep trying it on, and when it's got to a length that you like, that's where you stop. So I probably made my sleeves a bit shorter than the rest of the testers, because my drop is a lot bigger, because it's a lot more oversized, but they fit really nicely on me. They are just a nice cozy sort of, that's very much the length that they hit at. So they're just at my hands, just over my wrists, just at the bottom of my hands. I did use a lot more yarn than in the suggested yardage. So it's suggested, I think, 1,700 meters of a DK weight yarn. I used in total. So I used in total all of my Seam colourway, which I had 4 balls of. So this is, I haven't got one with me to tell you the composition, but I think it's a 60-40 cotton acrylic blend. It's a blown yarn. And each of the big cakes of the prints are 435 meters for 150 grams, and I had 4 of those, so I had 1,740 meters of the Seam. And in total, I used 2,111 meters of yarn. So that was what weight, it's 728 grams, I think, is the overall sweater, and that was what weight that equates to of this yarn. So that's how much I used. Now, that isn't a straightforward, oh, you've used all of the Seam and then you've used your marble, because on this sleeve, I think it is, yeah, it's this sleeve. I don't know if you can tell at the top. I can, but it's because I know I've done it. I ran out of the Seam, and I had to use some bits of another colour of this yarn that I have in my stash. I've got one single ball of the colour Salterton that came. I wasn't super happy with the colour. I didn't use it in my Yorkshire blanket, which is what I'd intended it for, and it's just sort of sat there, and I've used it to swatch a couple of times and things like that. But it's got these sort of pinks and purples in. And what I did was essentially I striped it up at the top with what was left of the Seam to sort of, yeah, I mean, this is still Seam here with these pink bits in. And this is where I've started striping and marling. I don't think it's very obvious. I hope not anyway. It is to me, because I know that I did it. But when I'm actually wearing it, you can't tell. But yeah, at least, what, 5 rows there? 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 rows, and some of the joining I had to do with some of another colour. So I probably used about 1,800 meters of the main colour alone, and then the rest of it, which would be what, about 3,311 meters or something like that of the cream. So it definitely used more yarn than the pattern, than the estimates in there. So I'm sure Grace will take that under advisement when she releases the pattern. But I'm really happy with this. I'm really happy with this. I've worn it quite a lot already. It's not suitable for work, obviously. I haven't. I did at one point put this on and have it on a Teams call, and I was conscious that it almost looks like I'm wearing pajamas. So it's not suitable for that. But I didn't really intend it to be suitable for that. I wanted something cozy and comfy and oversized that I could just throw on, that I could still feel sort of put together in, but it's quite fun. It's got a bit of a springy vibe to it, and it's really cozy. It's light because of the blown yarn, but it's really, really cozy. And like I say, I made no alterations to the pattern. The one thing I would note is there's quite a lot of seaming, because it's made flat in pieces and then seamed, and the sleeves you do in the round, but then you seam on at the end. You do them from the bottom up to make sure that your stitch pattern goes the same way up as it does on the body. So there was quite a lot of seaming, and it took me most of a day, when most of my time was focused on this, to get that finished. So if you don't like that, just bear that in mind. But it was a really fun pattern to make, and I definitely think I would do it again. I'd probably make a couple of sizes smaller. I've got an oversized one, I'd make a more fitted one. But yeah, really, really nice pattern. So this is the Breton Sweater. This will be coming out in a couple of weeks, and I very, very highly recommend it. It's very fun. Very, very fun. So that is the only finished object that I have here with me. I have a half finished object to talk about, and I do have it here, so let's touch on this. I touched on this briefly in my whip parade, but I wanted to go into a bit more depth. So this is a test knit for Isabel of, I think it's Bribay. I'm not sure how you're supposed to say it. I'm really sorry. I'll pop her Instagram name on screen and everything like that. And this is the Pauline Socks. So this is a fairly simple, fairly beginner-friendly sock pattern. I know one of the testers was a beginner, and this was the first time she'd knit socks. It is a top-down or cuff-down sock. It's all stockinette, just with some, you do some colour change in stripes, and you do them again here. Heel flap and gusset, just a standard slip stitch heel flap and gusset, no eye of partridge or anything like that. And a very simple rounded toe and everything. Really nice, simple, basic sock pattern, to be fair. And then the interest in it is that you go back afterwards and you use a crochet hook to add these vertical lines of surface crochet which match your horizontal lines that go across your foot and create this almost like plaid tartan effect. And it's really, really interesting. It's not easy to do. I consider myself a fairly experienced crocheter, especially with things like this is just slip stitches. So that's a really simple stitch. If you're not used to crochet, that's a fairly simple basic stitch that you learn how to do very early on. But this was a challenge, particularly down the bottom near the toe, which is where you start. It was a challenge, but I did still. I enjoyed it I enjoyed it at the end. I'll be honest, when I started doing these vertical lines, I was like, I can't do this. This is stupid. This is, that's my response generally to anything that's a bit unusual and confusing, is I just go to throw my toys out the pram. I'm not doing this. And then I persevere and I push through it and I can do it, lo and behold. So I've learnt this over my 36 years on this planet. So yeah, it was challenging to begin with. And to be fair, each of them were challenging at the bottom and then got easier towards the top. I finished the first one I did was the dark turquoisey colour, because I thought that would be easiest to see what I was doing, and I was right with that. And it was really hard at the bottom. I had to do it a couple of times, and I got up to the top and I was like, I get this now. This is easy. This is nice and quick. And then I started again with the pink. And no, I hadn't got used to it. I had got used to it, but it's so challenging at the bottom because you're coming in from up at the top. You've essentially got to bring your crochet hook in. I can't explain this very well. You've got to go in through there and be able to work on the inside with yarn. So because you've got all this extra sock, you're having to sort of push your hand down and try and work out what you do. And that's what makes it challenging. Up the top, you've got much less. So you're essentially working through this little bit and you can see it much easier. But yeah, really, really fun, very interesting and quite different than anything I've seen before. And I wanted to sort of give a bit of kudos to the designer as well. So when I originally saw this post on her Instagram looking for testers, she had 3 sizes. And I think the biggest was a 64 stitch sock. And I was gutted because I really wanted to test these, and I always make a 72 stitch. And when I looked at the sizing that she had on there as well, it didn't go up to the size of foot that I have. I think I've got like a 9.5 inch width foot or whatever it was, and it didn't go up to that. And I realise this isn't a garment, so it's not so, socks aren't as important when it comes to size inclusivity. Most people could work out how to grade it to themselves, but I instantly commented and said, I'd love to test these for you, but my foot size is bigger than this. I'd normally use this many my foot size is, I think I just said my foot size is bigger than this. If you ever add bigger sizes, I'd love to test these for you, or is there any option that I could make it for a bigger size? And she came straight back and asked how many stitches that would normally be, and she went and graded it there and then, and I got included in the test knit the next day along with another tester who was testing the same size socks, and she just did it there and then. And I realise again it's a bit different, challenging on a garment that isn't size inclusively graded, but she was completely open to it. She responded to it super quickly, and then she included me and the other tester in the test knit so that we could verify, does this work? So this is a 72 stitch on a 2.5mm small circular needles for me, and yeah, it fits really, really nicely. So she straight away included that, which I was very, very pleased with. In terms of yarns, the background is Spectrum Fibres sock yarn in the colourway Kitsch Christmas, which is a Christmas colourway from a couple of years back that she re-released this year as like a re-dye. And I ordered it last year, 2024, but I think it was from 2023 or 2022. And it's this white with sort of flecks of pink and green and really, really nice colours in there. I don't know the 3 colours off the top of my head. They're all mini skeins, but I sort of think this blue is a Wild Pearl Yarns one. I'm not 100% sure on that. The pink, the bright pink and the bright greeny blue are both minis from Cheshire Yarns hand dyed. But yeah, I need to do the second sock for this. This will be coming at some point this year, but I'm not in a rush to do the second, especially after those stripes getting frustrated. But this is the other half finished object that I've got. And then I have 3 other finished objects to talk to you about. I'm going to have a drink. I'm going to go over them fairly quickly because, like I said, I don't have any of these with me now. They've all gone. So the first thing is I finished my second Giverny sock, which was a test knit back in, I think, November time for Little Loops. beautiful lacy socks, rib lace socks that I had done in, I don't think I've got the yarn here, Mothie and the Squid sock in the colourway Poinsettia, and I was doing those as a Christmas present for my mum because she'd seen that yarn at a yarn show, not got it there and then, but fallen in love with it and wanted something from it. So I made her those. She absolutely loves them. I finished the second one, and I used in total 306 metres of yarn for both socks. Again, I think there were 60 and 70 stitch sizes in that sock pattern, and I made the 70 stitch size. They fit me and her really well, and there are two options in that pattern as well for the cuff. There is I think it's either a 1x1 or a 2x2 rib cuff, and the picot cuff, and I did the picot. I will pop up a picture, I'll make myself some space, of the first sock that I finished. I did the second sock exactly the same, and then I gifted them to her with the little tag attached to them so that she could see it was that colourway, and she absolutely loves them. So I'm really, really pleased with those. And they went to her a couple of weeks back. The yarn was lovely to work with, but the Giverny socks finished. I've got a little nugget left of the Mothie and the Squid yarn, which is in my stash, and I'll probably use it as maybe a contrast on something later in the year. And the other finished object that was also socks was the Winter socks, which was, you saw me finish the first one, and I was working on the second one during Vlogmas, which was a pattern by Hannah of Herb Garden Knitwear. I did the first one as a test knit, and again finished the second one as a present. They were a present for my husband, and I knit those out of, so these are colour work socks, again cuff down, and I knit them in a Schoppel Zauberball in the shade Schokoladenseite, which a few of you actually corrected me. I think I'd said it was like chocolate gifts or something like that. My other half speaks some German, and he thought he'd got it right, but he was off on that. It's like get my good side, get my chocolate side. I quite like that. I think that's a really nice, sweet way to put it. But that was the colour, and then the contrast colour was Drops Fable in the shade Off-White. So cream for the colour work, and then the Schoppel colour changing yarn for the background. They've been gifted, and he's worn them already. They've not got as much wear as his socks usually do, and I think, unfortunately, it's because he likes them too much, and he's worried that if he wears them, he's going to break them. He really, really likes them. He just maybe likes them a little bit too much, so they'll get worn eventually, because he said they are very nice and warm, very nice and soft, because it is 100%, I think it's 100% wool. It doesn't feel like superwash, certainly the Schoppel, and they blocked really nicely, and it's colour work. So you've got the two strands, so it makes it nice and warm and sturdy. So they were very well received, and I really loved working with that yarn as well. The Drops Fable is a really good workhorse. I've used that a couple of times for socks and for garments and for contrast colours and things. But the Schoppel, that was the first time I've ever used it, and I really, really liked it, particularly with that colour changing, the long colour change. So that was my third finished object. I should say only the Giverny socks and the Breton Sweater have been finished in 2025. Oh no, it wasn't. I said this was my first finished object of 2025, but I finished this on the 6th of January, and I finished the Giverny socks on the 3rd of January, so they were my first finished object of 2025. Yeah. Anyway, I finished this on the 6th of January, I finished the socks on the 3rd of January, and then the winter socks were finished on the 20th of December, just before we went away for Christmas. And the other thing was also finished, that I'm going to talk about, was also finished before Christmas. So the last thing that I finished since we last spoke that I wanted to talk to you about is the Amelia cardigan, which was it was a sample knit for Woolly Knit. So this is a pattern, one of their own patterns. I think you can get it on Ravelry, and you can most likely get it from them as well. And this was knit in pieces from the bottom up, seamed at the end. And it was a V-neck, it was cables all over, it had pockets. It was really enjoyable to knit, actually. By the end of it, I was fed up of it, and I was done, because it had a deadline, and it's a lot of cables. And it's a lot of the same cables repeated over all of the panels, but it looked fabulous. It was in their own Aran weight yarn. So Woolly Knit, if you're not familiar, is the mainly stock British wool on cones and in balls, and they're a good discount option for some good quality British wool. I've used them quite often. I'm going to be doing some more stuff with their yarn moving forward in 2025. I'm 100% certain they ship internationally, because I know people like Inga from Knitting Traditions have done cone alongs with them before and things like that, so they very definitely do ship internationally. Obviously, it's not so budget friendly if you're shipping internationally, but they are a very good option. What I've used most is their British wool 4-ply cones, but this is their British wool Aran weight cone, and I have used that before. I'm looking over there because I've got my Dartmoor sweater over there, which I was wearing earlier today, and that is knit in their Aran weight cones held with drops mohair, and it's 100% British wool. The Amelia was knit in their cream shade, and it used one full cone and probably about half of another. So what's that about? That's about 600 grams of Aran weight yarn. I was making the smallest size for the sample, which was 36 to 38 inch bust. So not a size that would fit me in the slightest. So, but if that gives you a bit of an idea of the yardage that you might need to make it for yourself, then great. It wasn't the most size inclusive pattern. I think the biggest size was maybe 46 to 48 inches or 48 to 50 inches bust. So I could have made one that fit me if I wanted to, but it wasn't much more inclusive than that. So yeah, obviously when it's for a sample, I knit the pattern that I'm asked to knit. And yeah, it wasn't the most size inclusive. If I was choosing for myself, I think there are more size inclusive options out there on the market. Maybe that are slightly more modern looking as well, if you wanted to make an all over cable cardigan. Obviously recently we've had the biggest spate of cardigans that are inspired by Taylor Swift's folklore cardigan, so there are loads of options out there. And I know one of my friends, Leah of Leah Amber Knits, is currently in the process of designing a V-neck cable cardigan herself, which looks absolutely stunning. And whenever she comes around to releasing that, that would also be a really good option as well. But it did look gorgeous. I'll pop some pictures up. I definitely took pictures before I sent it back. It looked gorgeous. It doesn't have buttons on. My version doesn't have buttons, even though the thing should have buttons, because they'd said, don't just do the buttonholes, don't put the buttons on. We will do that when it comes back. So I was quite glad I didn't need to do that, because I'm not the biggest fan of doing buttons. And excuse me. So yeah, you would need to add buttons if you were doing it yourself, but I was very, very pleased with how it looked in the end. The yarn blocked beautifully. It always does from them. It blocked absolutely beautifully, and I was very, very pleased with it. But I was equally pleased to get it sent off, get it back to them, and have them confirm that they'd received it and I've been paid for it. So that's all good. That's all done. So I'm very pleased with that. I've got no sample knits on the go at the moment. I've got one coming up probably shortly, hopefully. But we'll talk more about that when it comes. And that'll be a bit different because that's going to be a shawl. So that'll be quite different. So that's everything I finished. I feel like I'm out of breath and I've been talking for half an hour and we've only talked about finished objects. I knew this was going to be a long one because it's been so long since I did one. We've got some whips to talk about. Oh, I've left one over there. After all that, I've left a whip. Let me go get it. We've got some whips and we have got a couple of acquisitions as well. I said I was going to be honest about acquisitions and things that come into my stash. Don't judge me yet. I am on a yarn ban. It's still on the yarn ban. I'll explain. But let's talk about some whips. First and foremost, let's talk about the one that you have seen before properly on the podcast, and that is my Musselburgh hat that I'm making for my dad. I'm making some really good progress on this. I'm hoping in the next sort of week to have this done, although I'm keeping this for essentially meeting knitting, television knitting, things like that. So this is where we're at. It's looking quite long. I think I've got about 16 inches of length, something like that now, and it needs to be at 21 and a half, I think. So I've got a few more inches to do, but then I'll be ready to do the decreases and join it together at the other end. If you're not familiar with the Musselburgh, I realised I haven't actually talked about the pattern because I've assumed everybody knows the Musselburgh pattern, but you might not. So the Musselburgh pattern is a hat pattern by Isolde Teague. It is a slightly unusual pattern on the market, and I think that's why it's so popular. In that you cast on at one end, you increase until you get to a certain size, you knit straight, and you create essentially a tube. So you knit straight until you come to the point where you do some decreases and you mirror this on that side. And then I'll see if I can maybe find some footage of somebody else doing it, or I'll show you once we've got to it. But essentially you fold one end inside the other, sort of, yeah, and then you can fold the brim up and it creates a double thickness beanie, which I think my dad will wear a lot. It'd be nice and warm, and also it's very similar to the kind of commercial beanies he wears most of the time, which are quite simple, quite plain. And it's also a gaugeless pattern. I think that's how she words it. So essentially you cast on with whatever yarn and needles that you want. She recommends you use usually I think like half size up, I think, from whatever the needle size is recommended for that yarn. So I've done this on 3mm needles because this is sock yarn, and I would normally do a sock weight yarn on 2.5mm needles. So I went up to 3mm needles. And then essentially once you've got to a point where you've got a big enough section to measure your gauge, she gets you to measure your gauge. And then there's a table in the pattern of all sorts of different gauges. If you've got 9 stitches per inch, or 7 or 6 or 5 or whatever. And she then gives you numbers on how to turn that into, I think, everything from a child up to an adult extra large. So it's a very, very versatile pattern. Very versatile. I've seen people do them colour blocked. I've seen people do them. I think Jonathan's Days did one a couple of years back with a different yarn on the inside that was softer and warmer, so you could have that next to your head basically, and then the outside's a bit more rustic. You can do them striped, you can do them to use up scraps, you can all sorts. So extremely versatile pattern. And this yarn that I'm using is BFL Silk and Cashmere blend from Fayfolk Fibres in the shade Mirror Dancers, and you can see it in the skein really well actually on the ball and in here. It's a navy background with beautiful pops of sort of turquoise, green, purple. It's pooling a little bit. You can see it more on camera actually than you can in person, because I can see this big bit here, but you really can't see that in person. It just comes across as like an overall sort of mild effect, and it's extremely soft with that silk and cashmere in it. They're quite low percentages, but it makes it really, really nice to work with. It's extremely soft, but not too soft, because I think I've mentioned on here before, my dad doesn't like super soft things. He doesn't like fluffy things particularly. If I made him anything with mohair, I think he'd just throw it away from himself. Like, ugh. Not his thing. So I think this will be absolutely fine. And blues and things are very much his colours, blues, greens, greys. So I think hopefully this will be something that he likes. And yeah, hopefully, like I say, I've got a few more inches to do before I start the decreases. But we're working down the yarn nicely, and it shouldn't take me too much longer to get this finished. Very versatile pattern, very much enjoying knitting it, and will be definitely making some more this year. I plan on making one for my mum, and one for my other half, and one for me. So plenty of things to knit. You've seen this one as well, so let me talk about this one. This is my Pearly, oh my god, the cables and the yarn and this is my Pearly Cardigan by Leah Amber Knits. I should say as well, not everything that I have as whips is going to be talked about today. These are just the ones that have been actively worked on, so there might be other things that you've seen me mention in my whip parade that I'm not then mentioning today. It's because these have taken priority and I've actually had some active work. So I think last time I showed my Pearly Cardigan, last time I showed it on a podcast I was going to be ripping it out, but last time I showed it when it was on the whip parade, it just had this, I had the back I-cord done. Now we have, so we've got two shoulders. Come here, get this onto the needles a bit better. That's better. We've got the two shoulders. You start off basically here and you do these bits. I don't know if you can see. Yeah, the stitches go this way on these bits and then down on both of the backs. So you start here and you work your I-cord on the side of it, and then you work your front panel. You do the same on your other shoulder, and then you pick up at the back of those shoulders with another I-cord, and you start working down your back panel. So that's where I'm at with that. And if I sort of pop it, it's going to be hard to see because of my hair, but that's sort of roughly where we are. And it is coming out. I love how that hot orangey pink looks, particularly on camera, but it looks just so bright, just as bright in person. So yeah, loving how this is working out. And then I'm going to join in the underarm and start working flat for the body. So I've not got massive amounts to go on the back panel before I start doing the underarm shaping and joining, but I'm loving how these yarns are working together. So the cream is Hobie, oops, yarn's going everywhere. The cream yarn is Hobie Amigo, which is, they call it HB acrylic, and I think that's supposed to be high bulk acrylic. This is in the shade Ecru, I think. It hasn't got a shade name on it, has it? No, it just says colour 02, and I'm pretty certain that was Ecru. These are 50 gram balls, 100% acrylic. and it gives you 175 meters per 50 gram ball. This was really, really affordable. I got it on sale, and I'm sure it was £1 something a ball, but it was still only like £2 something a ball full price, and it's extremely nice acrylic. It's quite a light DK. I don't know if you can see there, it is a bit of a light DK, but it's got gauged really nicely for this, and there isn't a single bit of squeak working with this. If you didn't tell me this was acrylic, I wouldn't know it was acrylic. It's very soft. It almost feels like a superwash merino or something like that, with maybe a bit more stretch to it. It's really, really nice to work with, and this has been the thing that I've worked on an evening when my hands are a bit sore and I want something I don't have to think about too much, because this is a really good combination of mindful and mindless. So you've got the bits where you do the I cords and stuff that you need to pay a bit more attention to, and then big swathes where you're just knitting back and forth. So there's little, like potato chips, but everybody calls it potato chip knitting, don't they? Little bits of interest and mindfulness, and then you're back to some really mindless, brilliant stockinette flat. So very much enjoying this. I forgot to mention the coloured yarn. So this is my contrast colour, which is so bright. It's like neon orange. It's really, really good. This is Signet Sugar Spun, which is a wool and acrylic blend. I can't remember again the percentages because I've lost the ball band for it. But it's got almost like a halo to it. It almost comes off like it's got a mohair in it, but it hasn't. The halo's not really coming across on camera very much. It is, yeah, you can see it down here a bit better. It's got a very, very distinct halo to it. And again, really nice to work with. I feel like this was maybe £3 or £4 a ball, and these are 100 gram balls. So again, really not very expensive at all. Comes in some really fun colours. It's not the greatest colour selection. And in terms of anything that isn't bright, it wasn't great either. I think there was maybe a white, a grey and a black, or a navy. A bit of an odd colour selection, but it's quite a new yarn, I think. And I'm hoping that it ends up being popular and Signet release other colours in this, because this is very, very fun and nice to work with again. I was a bit concerned about working with something fluffy on an I-cord, but it's worked out really, really nicely. It's very easy to work with. And it also gives this sort of contrast of not just colour, but texture on the I-cord stripes. So I'm really pleased with how this is working out. So that's my Pearly, which is completely tangled. Let me just detangle this. The only reason this hasn't had more work on it is because I've got a couple of other test knits that have closer deadlines, so I've been putting more time in onto those. But this has been something that I've very much wanted to work on, so I keep picking it up and doing little bits on it. So let's talk about the two that have closer deadlines, so I've had more work on them. So this one is the one that's coming first. I've not mentioned this on the podcast before. I've again shown it briefly on my whip parade, but that's about it. This is quite hard to show because on very small cables, but I think if I show you, that's going to be the front panel. That's probably going to be the easiest place to show. So this is going to be the Lakes sweater by Jenny of Pythagoras. I will pop a picture on screen of what it's supposed to look like. This is a top-down raglan sweater with alternating sections of brioche, one colour brioche obviously, and garter. And it creates a very squishy, textured, beautiful fabric, very stretchy, very, very stretchy. It's got this one by one rib neck with short rows built into the neck at the back so that you've got a bit of shaping. And yeah, it's not even remotely a mindless knit, because I have to, you've got to pay attention to whether you're knitting garter or brioche. It's garter in the round, so you're knitting one row and then purling the next. And then when you come to do your increases, you've got to keep track of your increase rate anyway. But you've also got to keep track of, am I doing an increase in my brioche or in my garter? Because they're different ways to do increases. So you've got to keep track of that. And then the raglan sections are brioche as well. So you're constantly doing this brioche rib all the way down. But I do like the way that gives that a bit of a defined look to the raglan. I will say, I don't know if this is the pattern on me, but I am following the instructions in the pattern. I don't think the increases are super neat. Hopefully they'll block out a bit better. You can see down that row there. I'm not super happy with how they're coming out, and I'm hoping that they will block out, but actually on her sample they look sort of similar, so we'll see. I am knitting this in, I didn't even say for the others, did I? For the Pearly Cardigan, it's their DK weight yarns, and I'm knitting it on 4mm needles. For the Musselburgh, I did mention it was a 3mm fingering weight yarn. And for this one, it is 3.5mm needles, And the yarn I am using is Stylecraft Recreate, which is a DK. It's quite a light DK. You can see there it is quite a light DK. But this is a recycled yarn. I cannot remember the composition because it's made up of bits of wool and polyester and all sorts. But it's really nice. It's quite a almost matte texture, if that makes sense, particularly when you block it. Almost like a velvety texture. But this is the shade Champagne. You can sort of see there. It's a fairly neutral grey. I wouldn't say it's particularly warm grey. I would say it's also not particularly a cool grey. It is quite a neutral grey. And then it's got tweedy flecks of red and blue and orange, which show up a little bit better. No, they don't. I was going to say they show up a bit better in the garment, but they don't. But it's really fun and it's really nice to knit with. It's also very budget friendly. I got 5 balls of this, which gives you, each ball gives you something like 300 odd metres. So I've got more than enough meterage to do this. And it was £22.50 for 5 balls. So it's a really cost effective yarn, quite accessible. And I'm sure one of my friends uses it quite often. She said she pops it in the washing machine, and it's absolutely fine. So we'll try. I might do that with my swatch before I do it with my all over brioche sweater. But this is coming along quite nicely. This has got a deadline in about a month's time, so I've been putting a lot of work in on this the last couple of days, and I've done a good couple of inches. I'm going to keep working away on this, and then obviously once I'm through the yoke, the pattern, the texture pattern is all over the sweater, so I've got the sleeves and the body to do in the same pattern, but it is quite methodical and quite memorisable. It's just while I'm having to keep track of those increases that it's taken me a bit longer to do. But yeah, I'm loving how it's looking so far. So this is the Lakes sweater by Pythagoras. The next one that's been getting quite a lot of work is in the middle of a row. Of course it is. I will show this and then I might work on it just to finish the row, although it's very tangled. There we go, that's better. So this I showed briefly in my whip parade, and this has had a lot of work this week because this is a really enjoyable knit, very easy to memorise, and really, really satisfying to see working up. So this is going to be the Burnt Umber cardigan by Kelsey of Knitting the Carby. This is a bottom up all over textured cardigan, which has this beautiful texture. This it's essentially done like mosaic knitting. You slip in stitches and all that sort of stuff. But it creates this almost like scales texture. It's absolutely gorgeous. I'm sure she calls it like royal quilting stitch, and it's supposed to look like quilting. To me, because of the colours I've used, it looks like mermaid scales, and I absolutely love it. So I am knitting this in, the black is Drops Baby Merino in the shade black, as you might have guessed. And the bluey purple behind is, I don't know where it's gone, it's rolled off somewhere. Is Malabrigo Arroyo in the shade Lotus. Both of these were in stash. The black I'd bought to make a helix pullover by Jessie May Designs, and that hasn't been touched in over a year and is going to be pulled out, so this is getting repurposed from that. And the blue was bought from a D stash in 2024. But this is how it's working up. Let me finish the row because I've only got this much and it's just purling, and then I can show you it a bit easier. So yeah, essentially I've got probably about as much of the body pattern to do again on the back panel before I split for sleeves, and then you start working on the sleeves so that you can then join it all together. This one we've just been given an extension on because a lot of us were coming close to, we're looking like we were going to be close to the deadline basically. So I think it's got about 6.5 weeks left on it, which is plenty of time. And like I say, it grows really nice and rapidly as well because of the way that you work in it, and it's very satisfying to see it work up because you do your couple of rows in your background colour, and then you get your black or your contrast colour out and you go and do the quilting, and just watching those little quilting diamonds appear is really, really satisfying. Let me finish this row. So it's worth saying that with that extension to the deadline, it's likely that this isn't going to be released until sometime in March, I think. And it is worth noting as well, and I think this is probably the same with all of Kelsey's patterns, the recommended needle size in the test was 5.5mm needles, I think. But it became very clear very quickly. She has her tech editor is also in the test knit group. And her tech editor said very quickly, Kelsey has an extremely tight knitting style. So most likely you won't need 5.5mm needles, and I think most of us are on 3.5, which is what I'm on, and gets gauged perfectly. So it's worth mentioning if you're knitting the Carby pattern, and I know Yarning Designs is the same. Harper has an extremely tight knitting style as well, so it's worth bearing in mind. But yeah, there's the end of the row. So there I can properly show you where we're at, and how it's going to look. So obviously this is the bottom, and I'm working up, and that stitch marker was where I was on Friday when I started, and I feel like I only did a couple of hours of work, and it's a good couple of inches, or a good inch, let's be honest. And it grows really quickly and really satisfyingly, and there's some really interesting mixes of colours coming out in the test knit group. I did think halfway through as well, it would have been really interesting to have done the blue as the black, to flip the colours on mine, to have had a dark back colour and a bright front colour as well. I think would also look really, really fun. So this is getting quite a lot of work at the moment, and it's very, very satisfying to work on. So I'm going to continue working on this. It is quite heavy and it is dense, because you're doing mosaic. You can see on the inside the floats, which also look quite fun. But yeah, very satisfying to knit, very, very fun to work up, and just a really, really satisfying texture. So that's the Burnt Umber by Knitting the Carby. There's my main ball. And then I think I've only got one more to talk about. Yeah, I say that like I've not been talking for 50 minutes already. This is a brand new test that I've only started today. I am also going to apologise that most of what I'm working on at the moment is tests, because I realise that's not super satisfying for you guys, because you can't go and work on these things yourself. I'm going to try and be conscious of that for the rest of the year, and have stuff that I am working on that isn't a test that you can actually go and get the pattern for. So this has been a very, very quick workup so far. I applied for another crochet test because that's the wrong way up, it's that way up. But when I finished this, the way I was working, particularly, well, whilst I've been working on this basically, and when I was working on the Yorkshire blanket, which is what I was crocheting before this, I would be working on my knitted projects and my deadline projects during the day, you know, in the morning before I start work, in breaks from work, stuff like that, and on an evening. And then when it got to sort of later in the evening, I usually get to a point where my hands are hurting quite a bit. Especially given at the moment, most of the stuff I'm working on is the same or very similar size needles. So I've got the Musselburgh on 3mm, the Lakes and the Burnt Umber are both on 3.5, and then the Pearly is on 4mm needles. So they're all very close to each other. And crochet was always, I was then turning on an evening after I'd done quite a lot of work on those to the Breton or to the Yorkshire Sweater, because it's a nice welcome break for my body. So I think I've mentioned before, I'm an English style knitter, so I throw and I hold the yarn in my right hand. When I crochet, I hold the yarn in my left hand. So I hold the yarn differently. It's a different movement rather than knitting is sort of this, isn't it? And then crochet, you're doing this. It just eases a lot of stuff in my body if I'm starting to get sore hands from holding my yarn or whatever. And I noticed very quickly after I finished this, so I finished this on the 6th of January, and I'm filming this I think on the 12th of January, something around there. I quite quickly noticed I was craving crochet. And I've been working away a bit on my blanket, my Be More Vivian. I've not done much on it, so there's no point me showing. But the thing with that is it's not super portable, because I've got 5 different colours in it. I've got multiple balls of each colour, which are all in the bag together, so I can keep them together. You've got to take scissors because you cut after each row. And I kind of just wanted something that I didn't have to pay so much attention to, that I could pick up on an evening when my hands are sore and hurting. And that also would, the other thing that I did think is crochet uses up yarn really quickly and would get my stash down a bit quicker. So when I saw that there was a new crochet test call out for Mac Dye Conley for their Sugar Puff sweater, I applied, and I found out this morning, I think, that I'd been chosen and got sent the pattern. So their version is in a beautiful bright blue, and they've done it in 2 strands of sock plus a mohair, so it's a really vibrant blue, and it's got a bit of a halo to it. But they were very open to whatever you can get gauge with, you can use. So I had in stash these 2 gigantic balls, absolutely gigantic balls of Stylecraft Special Aran with wool. I've got the ball band somewhere, yeah, to be able to show you and talk about the composition and stuff. So This is the ball band. They come in massive 400 gram balls. This is one of two that I've got. I bought these from a D-stash, but there is a price on here. So it says that when they were bought, they were £10.99. I will look up online how much they are for now, but I still think they're going to be really cost effective, because the 400 gram balls you get for that £10.99 or whatever the price ends up being, that's 816 metres or 892 yards. So I've got these two in stash, and that's like 1,632 metres. That was some. Did you see that? That was really quick maths. I'm not very good at maths. That was really quick. And I was like, that would be, first off, they're probably going to get gauge for this, because she'd said an Aran weight or worsted weight would be the suitable sort of equivalent if you just wanted to hold one strand. So they're probably going to get gauge. And also, crochet eats yarn and works up quicker. So this would be a very quick way to get a big chunk of yarn out of stash. So I applied and I was chosen and I've started. So the Starcraft, before I forget, the Starcraft is 77% premium acrylic, 20% wool and 3% viscose, because it does have, yeah, you can see some little tweedy bits. This is the shade Tawny Nep. The viscose is going to be the tweedy bits, and this is where we're at. So essentially you do your back panel. This is my back panel. And then you do your fronts. You do it like you would do a drop shoulder sweater. So you do your back panel, and then you pick up from here and you come down and you do your fronts. So you do your front panel. You join together, sorry, for this kind of bit, your front yoke. And then you knit, crochet, not knit, your front panel flat. And then you join in the round to do the rest of it in the round. And then the sleeves are picked up and done in the round as well. So this is where we're at, and this is my back panel. I literally started working on this morning. It has worked up so quickly. I could not have got this done in knitting in this amount of time. I've just started doing some increases for the underarm, and I think I've got a few more rows of those to do before I then come back and do my pick up for my shoulders. But this is going to be, I think, a really wearable. It's still going to be slightly oversized on me, so I've applied for a size down from recommended for my bust size, and that's what I've been selected for. So the size I'm knitting is size large, which is for a 40 to 42 inch bust. However, the pattern recommends 8 to 10 inches of positive ease, and with the amount of ease that I'm going to have in the large size is more like what I would normally choose. So this should have, and I'm bang on gauge, so this should have about a 50 inch finished bust, which will give me about 5 inches of positive ease, which will be a really nice fit, I think. Obviously much less than this. And you can see actually, yeah, much less than this, but still use up a decent amount of yarn, still be oversized and comfy, just a bit of a different fit than recommended. And I did put that in my test knit application, and I was still chosen. I applied to knit the large, and did say in my application that I was going to do a size with less positive ease. However, I was happy to knit the extra large if that was what they preferred, and I was chosen for the large. So clearly they're happy with that. This is turning out really nicely. It is just so far double crochets with some, you can see some short rows in the middle there, but you can sort of see the drape that this pattern's got, this yarn's got at this gauge. So this is I'm doing it on a 5mm hook, which got my gauge perfectly, and that actually is the recommended hook size for the yarn. But it's created this fabric that's still nice and thick and squishy and warm. It isn't as see-through as it looks when I hold it up with the light behind it. That looks really see-through. It isn't that see-through. But it's going to create it's still got a nice amount of sort of drape and looseness to it. It's not going to create a really stiff fabric. So I'm really, really looking forward to this. I don't think this is going to take me long at all. There's an 8-week deadline on the test knit, but I've already done a massive chunk of the back. In less than 24 hours after getting the pattern, so I think I might fly through this, and I'm quite happy to be using up, like I say, what can only be described as an absolutely gigantic ball of yarn, 2 gigantic balls. And also, yeah, just to get it used up. I had ideas for what I was going to use it for, but I'd never got to that point. So yeah, this is going to be probably quite a quick crochet, and I'm going to be very happy to get this out of stash. So that's it for the whips that I've been actively working on over the last, well, however many weeks since you've seen me. There are some others, but in the last couple of weeks they've not had active work on them, so I'll show them when they do, rather than, we're already at an hour, rather than talking the hind legs off a donkey about stuff that haven't worked on in a couple of weeks and you probably won't see for another couple of weeks. I might as well just touch on those when we come to them. But I do have a couple of acquisitions that I was going to talk about. So if you watched my plans for 2025 and reflections on 2024 video that I did a couple of weeks back, you will know that I have put myself on a yarn ban. So the fact that I've got acquisitions is a bit surprising. There were some caveats to that, and actually these don't come under that caveat, so I'm going to talk about them. But I did say as part of that I wanted to be completely open and honest about what did come into my stash. So we're going to talk about those. So the first thing I've got, there's some rustling, sorry, is an actual acquisition. So I ordered this. First off, I ordered this back in December, just after Christmas, before January. But that is a proper cop-out, isn't it? So that isn't the only reason I ordered it. So I, very kindly for Christmas, my mother-in-law got me a gift voucher for Blacker yarns. She knows I knit. She's not a knitter or crochet or anything herself. She did a couple of years back get me a yarn bowl, which is still sitting over there, and I do use it from time to time. Obviously, a lot of the patterns that I'm knitting at the moment have more than one ball, so I don't use it very much at the moment. But I have used it, and I do quite like it, particularly if I've got something that attracts a lot of dog hair, because we've got dogs that have a lot of hair. So it's quite nice to protect it a little bit. But yeah, this year she got me a voucher, two £20 vouchers for Blacker yarn. So I had £40 worth of store credit. And I've heard of Blacker yarns. I've never ordered from Blacker yarns, and it was a bit more expensive than I expected. So I spent a long time on their website going through, basically trying to maximise what I had. I wasn't averse to paying a bit extra because, like I said in my video about stash and yarn ban, I would rather buy a bit of extra yarn to make sure that I get enough to make something that I will actually wear, rather than, and particularly with these, rather than just using the voucher for the sake of using the voucher, not getting something that I would actually use. The voucher did also have an expiry date of 12 months from the date of purchase on it, and I think she got it in like November, so it was going to run out anyway in the year that I'm doing the yarn ban. So I decided I was going to spend it sooner rather than later, and if I had to add a bit to it, I had to add a bit to it, but I wanted to do that to be able to get enough. So I was looking at the cones that they do. I could be wrong, but the only way I could see that you could get cones was to get kilogram cones, which actually is really good value, but they were £80 odd. I still think that's really good value, but I was going to have to double the price of the voucher to get that. And I looked at some of their other yarns, which again look stunning but are very expensive. And then I came across this stuff. This is Blacker Yarns Lyonesse, which is a pure wool and linen blend. I think it's 50-50. Yeah, 50% Falcon's wool, 50% linen. These are 50 gram balls. It says it's worsted spun. It says it about 3 times on it. I don't know why it says that, but it's worsted spun. 50 gram balls gives you 175 metres on 190 yards, sorry. And this is the shade Hematite. And I got this thinking that I would be able to make a summer top with it. This was my aim. This was on sale when I got it. It was £7 something a ball. Are they different dye lots? No, they're not. I think that was just the way it came out. Yeah, it's just a light. They aren't different dye lots. I was worried then for a minute. This was on sale. I think it's normally £9 something a ball, but it was down to £7 something a ball. So I added a bit of money to it to be able to get. I've got enough balls, so I've got a total of just under 1,200 metres worth of yarn, which will be enough for me to make a summer top from. And then with postage on top, I think I paid about £20. But paying £20 for 7 balls of yarn that gives me enough yardage to be able to make something from felt decent. I've yet to do anything with them, but these are now in stash. They're going to get used this year, and I wouldn't have bought them if it hadn't been for that voucher, because that's quite expensive to me. Total price of £60 to make a summer top. It might be lovely. I've never knit with anything containing, that's a lie, I have knit with stuff containing linen before, but never a wool linen blend like this, so we shall see. It feels lovely. It feels still quite woolly and rustic, so we'll see how it turns out with a gauge swatch, but the colour is absolutely lovely. I think they might be discontinuing this because they only had 2 colours left on the website. I think there was this and there was cream, and I figured that I was slightly more likely to wear a grey than a cream. So I'm going to be making something out of this year. And then the other two things that I've got are part of a swap. Excuse me. So I participated in, I think it was called the AFC Fibre Exchange. Having had the Advent swap that I'd really enjoyed doing, I was on a swap kick, and back in, I think, late December, I signed up for another swap. And the parcel arrived this week. And it's absolutely gorgeous. It's so absolutely gorgeous. So yes, it's an acquisition. No, I didn't buy it, and I'm doing a swap. So I'm going to be sending some of my stash out with this, and I'm going to make sure that I send at least as much as I've brought in. But I wanted to show what I've got, because again, being honest and open and accountable about what I've got. So I got a wonderful package, which included this coffee that I'm drinking, which is absolutely beautiful. Some Smarties, there was something else in there. Oh, a little bag of stitch markers, progress keepers. No, stitch markers, not progress keepers. And some, a little project bag. And then these two beautiful skeins of yarn from the Woolchemist. And I've been wanting to try Ronnie's yarn for a while. So this was very well received. So this was the first one. The two sock sets, I should say. So this is the shade Tiger's Eye. This is the Deluxe sock base, which is 85% superwash merino wool and 15% nylon. It's extremely squishy and soft, and such a beautiful colour. That's really true to life, actually. Really beautiful colour. With this beautiful orange mini. The main skein is 400 metres and the little mini is 80 metres. And then this one took my breath away a bit. This is absolutely stunning. This is the shade Persephone. And this is on the gold sparkle base. Oh, look at it. You can't really see the sparkle in there, can you? But it's so beautiful. All these burnt oranges and browns and reds in the main skein, and then this really nice sort of pinky red to contrast it. There's even some really dark sort of blacks and greys around here. This one is 80% superwash merino, 15% nylon and 5% stellina with the same yardage, 400 metres for the main skein and 80 metres for the mini skein. These were very well received. I was chatting to the person I swapped with, and I was sort of saying, initially obviously I thought socks, because sock sets, but part of me, they're so soft and so beautiful that part of me is a little bit loath to use them on something that's going to go on my feet. I kind of want to see them. She reached out to the dye because she's friends with the dyer and asked for suggestions, and we have had a chat about a couple of shawl patterns that might work, but particularly this one I think is self-striping, so I don't know whether I'm just going to use this for some socks. And these are for me, these aren't for anybody else, these are for me. Nobody else is having these socks. They're also my colours, so they're definitely for me. But this was such a wonderful swap, such a well thought out swap. If you're ever unsure about doing anything like that, those fibre swaps and things, so far I've only done two, but I've had a fantastic experience with both. So yeah, I would say do your due diligence and make sure that you're signing up for something that you're happy with. But yeah, really happy. I'm not going to share what I'm going to swap, just in case the person that I'm swapping with does watch. I don't think she does, but I don't want to ruin it. But she's told me she's very much into, she wants to try some British wool. She's into sort of heathery colours, natural colours, things like that. And I have some stuff in my stash that I am very excited that I think she will like, and also I don't really know what to do with, so it's nice to be able to pass that on to her. But it ticks those boxes very much. So I'm going to get that together this week and send it out. But I'm going to try and make sure that I've got at least the equivalent sort of amount of, at least weight. These are fingering weight. What I'm going to be sending, I think, is DK is what I've got to send. Although I will check what she's asked for. One of them actually is a 4-ply that I'm going to send. So yeah, I'm going to try very hard to make sure that the equivalent amount that I've brought in is what I'm going to send out again. So I'll be on a net negative. But yeah, I wanted to be honest about what I'm bringing in, because like I said, there will be things. I've not signed up for any more swaps, and I'm not going to sign up for any more swaps. I also don't have any more vouchers to spend. This was, very unexpected, very kind of her. I do think as well that I'm going to make her something this year. She was really interested in it. When we went over before Christmas on like the 20th, she was asking lots of questions about, she couldn't believe I'd made my wedding dress. What do I make? What else had I made? Kind of thing. How do I do it? And she was really impressed with it. So I think I'll look to make her something this year. Maybe a shawl or a pair of socks or a hat or something. She's got very different colouring than me. She is blonde hair, light blonde hair, blue eyes, so completely different colouring to me with you know, basically black everything. So I've possibly got some yarns in stash that would really suit her and that might not necessarily be as suitable for me. So yeah, I'm not sure whether a hat or some socks, or a shawl. My initial thought was a shawl, but we'll see. So that's going to be somewhere on there. I can't remember when her birthday is. I feel like her birthday might be June time, so maybe for a birthday or for Christmas. And we're going to be making something this year. I don't want to buy things to make something for her, not because it's her. I don't want to buy things to make presents for anyone this year. I want to use what I've got. So yeah, I'm trying to think what I've got in stash that I could use, that I want it to still be suitable and that she'd like it, not just because it uses up my stash. So we'll see. But we're an hour and 10 minutes in. I've got a really sore throat. I've nearly drunk all my coffee. And I'm surrounded by carnage, as always. So that was everything I wanted to show to you today. Priority this week, the thing that's going to take the most time this week is going to be my Lakes sweater, because that's the one that's got the soonest deadline. It's due in pretty much bang on a month from when I'm filming this, I think. So that's going to be the thing that's going to take the most time. But I'll keep you up to date and show you how that goes. I'm probably also going to put a lot of time in on that crochet sweater, the Sugar Puff sweater. So yeah, they're both going to be the main priorities over the next couple of weeks. And yeah, there shouldn't be any more acquisitions coming in. If there is, I've done something wrong, so let's not. But yeah, thank you very much for watching and coming and spending your time with me. I'm going to be filming in the next few days, and it'll be coming out probably in about the next week or so, everything I've knit in 2024. It's taken a lot of information gathering to get that ready, because I did knit quite a lot. So it is coming. I hope you enjoy it when it comes. But yeah, remember to let me know what you want to see from me. Otherwise, whether you want to see, for the 1,000 subscriber video, if you want to see a stash tour, unpopular knitting opinions, or ask me anything. Yeah, I'll be back next week, either with another podcast or potentially with a slightly different video, maybe the everything I've knit in 2024. But that's everything I wanted to show to you guys today. Thank you for watching again. Thank you as always. Thank you again for your support, because I still can't quite believe that we've gone over 1,000 subscribers. That's absolutely mental. And I'm really excited to see what 2025 continues to bring, because that is an exceptionally exciting start to the year, isn't it? Starting off with that, I'm really, really, really chuffed, honestly. So thank you to everybody who's watched, shared, subscribed, told your friends to come and watch, whatever you've done. Thank you so much, and thank you for being here. I will catch you on the next one. But stay safe, stay well, stay knitting or crocheting or whatever crafting you're doing, and have a wonderful day, week, evening, whatever, wherever you are. Thanks, guys. Bye.